Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to the GSL-English podcast. My name is Gideon, and this is a podcast for all learners of English to practice and improve in a relaxed and natural way. And in this episode, we are going to talk about how things don't always go to plan. That's happened to me recently, and quite frankly, it's been infuriating. So I wanted to share my experience with you recently on how things just don't always go to plan. No matter how much we prepare, no matter how much we try, sometimes things are just out of our control and there's nothing we can do. So if you are a regular viewer or listener of this podcast, you'll know that this episode has come out on a Tuesday, as my trusty clock says. So we're going to go through why that is in a moment. And you'll also know that this is the first episode in about 2 weeks. And that's because we've had some issues, which of course now we've managed to resolve. So going to fill you in on all of that. Going to have a good old catch up. If you are new here, this is a podcast that I put out every Sunday at 10 o'clock on YouTube and Spotify, where we talk about a variety of different topics. We don't generally have a script. I have bullet points that I'm going to go through. Sometimes we'll read an article and then analyze that together. But the idea is for you to listen to real, authentic British English to best prepare you for real life situations. So rather than me reading off a word perfect, grammatically perfect script, I just speak freely and openly. So you can just get used to how British English sounds. And if you like what you hear or watch, give me a subscribe on YouTube or give it a follow on Spotify. But whatever you're doing, I hope you're doing well. I hope you've had a good week. I hope you've had a good, nearly 3 weeks, I think. So let's get into that. Actually, no, before we get into it, you know what I'm going to say? Grab a cup of coffee, get a cup of tea, get comfortable. We've got a lot to catch up on. So, where have I been the last few weeks? And why on earth is there an episode coming out on a Tuesday? Why is there an episode coming out on Tuesday, the 10th of February? You might be thinking you've gone mad. Maybe you have. Maybe we're all a little mad. That's okay. But yeah, the podcast does normally go out on a Sunday, but we have had some camera issues and it has been driving me mad. Now, I'm a stickler for routine. Stickler, very informal way of saying that I like to stick to a routine. I like to plan my week out. My wife and I have realized recently that I actually like to plan my whole day by the hour, not necessarily writing it down, but in my head, I kind of plan the whole day to the hour just so I know where I'm at, if I'm ahead of schedule. For my wife, this is crazy. You know, this isn't how her mind works. She writes everything down. But for me, it's how it works. I'm a planner. I like routine. And I always record this podcast on a Friday afternoon, unless something happens. I'll do a Saturday, but I like to get it sorted and prepared on a Friday afternoon so I know that everything's okay. It's going to go out on a Sunday and I don't have to work the weekend. So I generally plan and write the episode, what I'm going to talk about from Monday to Thursday, record Friday, then we're good to go on Sunday. So Friday of 2 weeks ago was a normal Friday. I went to record. I used my iPhone to record. And once I hit, the record button, I feel like I said record there way too many times, but I noticed that the picture was awful. It was hideous. It was like I was recording within the realms of a raindrop. It looked awful. So I cleaned the lens and I noticed that I had smashed the camera on the iPhone. I'm very clumsy. Any of my friends will tell you I'm a clumsy guy. So I've dropped my phone 1,000 times. It's been fine. So I couldn't record the podcast. So I tried my wife's phone. That doesn't work. She's got an Android. Didn't happen. So I thought, okay, not a problem. I'll run to my mum and dad's who live down the road and I'll borrow one of their iPhones. Came home. That didn't work because we didn't share the same Apple ID. I'm technologically illiterate, so I couldn't get it to work. So that was Friday. And I'm going to be honest with you, at that point, I was already frustrated because my routine had broken. Things had not gone to plan. But in my head, I was thinking, oh no, that's not right because I'd prepared for this. I need to record it Friday afternoon. I'm not happy. This is messing with me. So, my wife, she's quite reasonable. She said, don't worry about it. So we found a camera of hers, an old camera of hers, an old Nikon, which we had no cables to connect to the computer. So I went online, ordered all the cables, and they didn't arrive that night. They, for some reason, arrived a week later. So now I had no way of possibly recording the podcast. And now I'm getting really frustrated. Things are not going to plan. And I was trying to adapt. I was trying as hard as I could, but it seemed like everything was against me recording that podcast episode. I'm sorry if this is a really long story. It's not really that interesting. But yeah, stick around. Grab a cup of tea, grab a cup of coffee and just enjoy it. If you can. I'm talking about broken cameras. I appreciate it's a little bit boring, but I'm just going to keep on going. So then I messaged my friend, good friend, said, hey, you got a camera I can borrow? I've got issues with the podcast. He said, yeah. So I went and picked up the camera. Could I get it to work on my Mac? For the life of me, not a chance. So that happened. And then we went away for a weekend. We went away for our anniversary weekend. Actually, no, sorry. Yeah, so going back a week, wasn't able to record the podcast, camera's broken, cables came a week later, and then I came down with a stinking cold. When we talk about a stinking cold, it was nasty, it was horrible, I felt like death, and I just wanted to curl up in bed and do nothing. I sounded hideous, so I couldn't have recorded anyway, and that put me behind in being productive, proactive in fixing the situation. And then we went away for a weekend. And whilst we were away, all of the cables arrived that I needed to get my friend's camera working. So that's fine. I'll get a podcast recorded Sunday evening. Came home Sunday evening. None of the cables worked. The camera just would not connect to my computer. So I bit the bullet and did what my wife told me to do about 6 months ago. As my phone was really starting to slow down, I ordered a new iPhone. And here we are. iPhone 17 Pro. I love it. I think the picture quality's pretty good if you like it. Sorry if you're realizing how bad the quality was before. You're seeing this weird looking ginger guy now. Yeah, that's called clarity. I apologize, but I like it. So what am I getting at? Why am I telling you this story? Well, things didn't go to plan and I didn't like it. I couldn't get an episode out one week and I was thinking, oh no. And then the next week rolled by and I couldn't get an episode out. And although of course I do this on a voluntary basis, I do this as a hobby. This is not my full-time job by any means. I felt an element of guilt that you guys were not getting an episode. You expect one on a Sunday morning and it's not happening. And then I kind of got to this point where I was like, oh no, am I going to lose a load of followers? Am I going to lose, people are going to forget about the podcast. And I kind of, because things didn't go to plan, I realized that you kind of mentally spiral. But that's life, isn't it? Things don't always go to plan. Even if we try and adapt, even if we try and fix the situation, in all honesty, sometimes that just doesn't work. And we have an expression in English which is, it is what it is, meaning that the situation is what it is, and there's not really a lot you can do about it. And that's the situation that I found myself in through the very long-winded story that I just told you, it is what it is. I had tried everything I could, and I should have been okay with that, because I've tried everything I can. I've adapted. I've tried to be proactive, and it's just not working. It's not like, I wasn't able to record the podcast. And I thought, oh, screw it. There's no point doing it. No. But things don't always go to plan. And I think we're going to kind of tie this into English, to learning English, to speaking English, once we've looked at an interesting story. But how do we keep on going when things don't go to plan? How do we keep on going when we've had an idea of what's going to happen in place, and that doesn't happen, and it changes, and we don't like that change? How can we mentally keep on going? Well, I want to share a story with you. Very famous story. You've probably seen the film called Apollo 13. Houston, we have a problem. Which actually, in researching this episode, I realised that quote is incorrect. I think it's Tom Hanks that says it. I've got a history of getting all of these actors wrong on this podcast, but I think it's Tom Hanks that says, Houston, we have a problem. That quote is actually incorrect. What was actually said, if you know, let me know in the comments. But Apollo 13, great film, but things didn't go to plan with Apollo 13. Things, really did not go to plan. But I think we can learn a lot from how they handled the situation. So read through this article together. Apollo 13, when the plan failed and adaptation saved lives. So as we go through, feel free to read along with me if you're watching, even shadow read with me, which means to speak out loud at the same time. We're going to go through it point by point, highlight some vocabulary, and really see what we can take from this. So here we go. In April 1970, NASA launched Apollo 13 with a clear, ambitious plan: land on the moon. The mission followed the same structure as previous successful flights, and everything initially appeared routine. So a few words just to isolate here. Launched to take off Apollo 13 with a clear and ambitious plan. If you are ambitious, you're really striking for gold. You want to achieve a lot. The plan is grand, and to some might seem impossible. If you're an ambitious person, you don't just settle for the norm. You want to achieve, you want to succeed. And here they had this ambitious plan to land on the moon. An incredible feat. So it was ambitious. The mission followed the same structure as previous successful flights, meaning that, it followed the same routine, the same plan, and everything initially, at the beginning, at the outset, appeared routine. So, going to land on the moon, we're going to follow the same structure. Everything initially, at the outset, seems fine. Then, 2 days into the journey, the plan collapsed. Something collapses, it falls down. And particularly in this instance, the plan turned, to absolute disarray. It was gone. It collapsed. What happened? Well, an oxygen tank exploded inside the spacecraft, crippling critical systems and instantly turning a moon landing into a fight for survival. Power dropped. Oxygen was leaking. Carbon dioxide levels began to rise. The spacecraft was no longer safe. So 2 days into the journey, everything went wrong. An oxygen tank, which of course they needed in space, exploded inside the spacecraft. And it said that it crippled critical systems, basically meaning just completely ruined them, completely messed them up. And at this point, it instantly, so in that moment, it turned a moon landing into a fight for survival, meaning that this mission had now changed. This plan had changed from being a moon landing to now the focus was survival. Things did not go to plan. It is what it is in that situation. there's nothing they could do about it. They couldn't really think about landing on the moon. The plan had changed to survival. The original mission was over. At that moment, NASA faced a reality they had not planned for. There was no manual for this exact situation. No checklist titled, "What to do if everything breaks 200,000 miles from Earth." So now they're facing a reality, meaning, the actual situation they're in that they had not planned for. And there was no manual on how to handle this situation. There was no kind of instructions on what to do. Things had not gone to plan, and their plan has now changed. Instead of focusing on what they had lost, what did they do? Engineers and astronauts focused on what still worked. Things haven't gone to plan, but what did they do? They adapted. On the ground, NASA engineers dumped assumptions and started over. They spread out to the same limited equipment the astronauts had on board and asked a new question. How do we make this work with what we have right now? And I think that question, it is vital. I think that's a really important question to ask when things don't go to plan, when we're thinking about adapting, still succeeding and progressing. I think that's a really important question to ask. What can I do with what I've got now? It says that the engineers, got rid of assumptions, and they started from the beginning. So they got all of the same equipment that the astronauts had, laid it all out, and they thought to themselves, right, what can they do with this? And I think sometimes when things don't go to plan, we kind of think about hypotheticals. Like with my camera in the podcast, I could have thought, I did think, I'll be honest with you, why didn't I just order a new phone or camera when my wife said, why doesn't this work? Why didn't I, why doesn't? And we start thinking all of these hypotheticals. We start coming up with solutions for what we don't have. Well, when things don't go to plan and we still want to succeed, perhaps the question we can ask is, all right, it's not exactly how I want it. Maybe it's a work project. It hasn't quite gone to plan. Look, being completely honest, it's not exactly what I wanted, but what can I do with what I have right now? What can I do to fix this situation or to keep on moving forward? It goes on. In space, the astronauts abandoned, left behind the idea of control and followed improvised instructions, conserving power and using the lunar module as a lifeboat. Nothing about the return was smooth. The crew was cold, exhausted, and uncertain. But step by step, through constant adjustment, they made it back to Earth alive. It wasn't easy. There were challenges, effects. They were cold, they were exhausted, they didn't know what was going on, mental, emotional struggles. But through constant adjustment, they made it back to Earth alive. If something is constant, it doesn't stop. It keeps on going. So it wasn't just one change they had to make. They had to keep on adjusting as things did not go to plan. They had to keep on tweaking and making changes. And this is the interesting part. Apollo 13 is remembered not as a failed mission. When you think of Apollo 13, you didn't think, the failures. No. But as one of the greatest examples of problem solving under pressure. The lesson wasn't about perfect planning. It was about adaptability. And that lesson applies far beyond space travel. And I think that's the really interesting part. What we remember about that story is how they handled it, how they managed to work through everything changing. What an incredible example of adapting to situations. And sometimes that's just what we've got to do, isn't it? Things don't go to plan. Life doesn't go to plan. Work doesn't go to plan. something's not how we imagined it, it's not how we planned it, it's not how we wanted it to go, well, okay. First thing, we've got to accept it. It is what it is. I couldn't record the podcast that Friday. I couldn't record it the next week. I couldn't record the week after that. Yeah, it's frustrating. Yeah, it's not what I wanted. But what could I do in that situation to fix it? Well, I did everything I could and it didn't work. I kept on adapting and here we are now. So how does this apply to English? Well, I was thinking about it this way, that when we learn a language, we start with a plan, don't we? We want correct grammar. That's the final destination of our plan. Like for Apollo 13, it was landing on the moon. We want clear pronunciation. We want to speak confidently. We want to speak fluently. We want to get a job or have a career in English, speaking around the world. Great to have a plan to get to that point. But reality very often gets in the way. Things don't go to plan. Maybe it's a presentation at work that you've been preparing for ages. You're going to do it in English or whatever language, and you forget words. You misunderstand questions that people have asked you. Conversations don't go the way you expected. Basically, what happens is the plan that you've prepared for fails. Or perhaps you're studying English and maybe there's a certain exam you want to take, IELTS or Cambridge, and you don't pass it. That wasn't part of your plan. Well, what do you do now? Well, progress doesn't come from stopping. When things don't go to plan, the worst thing that we can do really is stop. Particularly when that comes to language learning, because things will not always go to plan. I would say actually that the majority of the time things won't go to plan. But progress comes from adapting, finding different ways to express an idea, continuing in communication despite mistakes, despite errors, despite a lack of perfection. And when we think of Apollo 13, it didn't succeed because everything went right. Its success came from adapting when everything went wrong. So adapt, don't quit when things don't go to plan, and don't beat yourself up. When things don't go to plan, yeah, it's frustrating. It's not what we wanted. It's not ideal, but it is what it is. But what can you do? What can we do with what we have in that exact moment? That's what really matters. So let me know, was there anything that you particularly take from that Apollo 13 story? Have you found yourself in the same situation, where you've prepared but things did not go to plan? What did you do to keep on going? So just a thought that I wanted to share with you. I know my problem sounds really inferior. I know there's much worse things going on in the world. It's sorted now, but we want to try and take lessons from situations in life, don't we? And I thought that was just an interesting one, that sometimes things don't go to plan. It is what it is. It is frustrating, but what you do after that is what really matters. So yeah, there you go. We're back. So there is going to be an episode as well this Sunday. So this Sunday, we're going to talk about success. Am I successful? Are you successful? What is success? I've got some great vocabulary, great expressions that we're going to highlight next week. But just as a little catch up whilst we're here, had a lovely anniversary weekend with my wife. We've been married 6 years, which is unbelievable. Time really does fly when you're having fun. And I put a little post out on YouTube, and you guys left some lovely comments congratulating both Heather and I, and I really appreciate that. You're all so lovely, so thank you very much. And we had a little break away in the New Forest, which is kind of towards the southwest of England. It's about 2.5 hours away from London. Apparently I'd been there when I was a kid, but I don't remember it. Oh, I fell in love with the place. If you come to England and you're looking for just a country break, you're looking for somewhere just to rest and relax, be within nature, you must go to the New Forest. It's like you step into another world. There's just horses, donkeys, deer, absolutely everywhere. And it's just beautiful. We had this gorgeous little Airbnb. I don't know if I can put the link to it actually. I'm not sure if I can do that. I will if I can. We had like a little log burner, just a 1-bedroom place in the middle of nowhere. There was all pheasants and squirrels and rabbits in the garden. And I genuinely, for the first time in a long time, felt like I fully switched off. Basically, because I couldn't do anything with the podcast, couldn't do anything with work. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to switch my phone off and just enjoy this time together. And that we did. The weather was a little bit rubbish. February in England. What else can you expect? But we're planning to go back in summer. And from there, so from the New Forest, you can drive down to the coastal town of Bournemouth. Beautiful little town in New Forest called Lymington. Yeah, if you come into England or you live in England and you're looking just for a little weekend break, you want to get away, I highly recommend the New Forest. We're planning to go back in summer. We're going to spend like 3 or 4 nights there and just go for walks, some beautiful pubs, have a pint in a pub, great dinners. There's a very fancy restaurant that we went to for our anniversary night called The Pig. If you're looking for some, a fine dining experience, I recommend that. If not, go to the East End Arms if you just want a good fish and chips and a pint. It was absolutely perfect. But it was, an absolutely brilliant weekend. So if you did get to this point in the podcast, I do appreciate it. Thank you for watching. I know that this has come out either on a Tuesday evening or a Wednesday morning. I'm not sure. It depends on how my internet likes to go with the upload. But I wanted to get something out for you guys. If you did get to this point, write plan in the comments. PLAN. And as always, I know we've had a little bit of a break, but I appreciate all of your support. I really do. Thank you for all the likes. Thank you for all the comments. And if you haven't done so, please do subscribe, follow on Spotify. It really just helps me out to keep on going. So there you go. Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you all on Sunday. Have a good one, guys.